What's up? I'm Logan Mills. This is video number 7 in our How to Catch Bass fishing video series. I want to take a minute before we get into the video to talk about, what I'm going to be talking about. And it's mainly going to be lures. This one's lures. But don't take this, everything I talk about, don't just copy this. I could say this lure is going to catch every single fish in your lake. You should buy it. It might work for me. It might not work for you. So this is more of like to help you figure out lures that work for your conditions rather than this exact lure. Because I live in the South, there might be muddy water down here. This might work in muddy water, but up north, it might be clear or wherever, and it might not work. So this is more of helping you figure out lures, for your locations, conditions, and rather than just copying me, because, I'm just a kid. But we're going to talk about this. And first, I'm going to start off with jigs. They're simple. Many different times. You got football jigs, swim jigs. Chatterbaits are a different type of jig. But mainly, just your jig in general. Like, one of the best baits, versatile. Well, I guess, they have different ones. Football jig, swim jig, you can swim it. Chatterbait has different action. This, you can work it on the bottom, jump it, different styles, different actions. And it's, they're nice to have. This one particularly, I like the little bit of blue, but I'm more of a natural color guy. But they can be boring at times. Because all you do is throw it. You can hop it or just sit there and drag it. That's how I do mine. Because it works. I'll show you this jig right here. I like it a lot. It works, but it might not work for you. So, see, the conditions I usually fish, I'm either fishing grass, rocks, or kind of sandy areas. If I'm fishing grass, not going to throw this. You can throw it, but I don't like to sit there and have to smack my lure in the water, pull grass off every cast. So if I'm fishing grass, I won't use this. I'll throw it rocks, sand, hard bottom. It works well. And that's jigs. I got, these are my little stowaways like we talked about in one of the other ones. And then talk about crankbaits. Different types of crankbaits. Get on the front. I gotta clean my box out. It's a little messy. So many different types of crankbaits. Lipless, rattle traps, deep divers, square bills, your round bills. So many different types. Oh, even your jointed baits. Each one has a purpose. Each one serves a purpose. Deep divers. If the fish you're fishing 20 feet of water. Well, this one won't go 20. I didn't grab the box. It has my other deep divers. But if the fish are down low, and sometimes if you're fishing deep, you could throw drop shot, throw jig, Carolina rig. It might not work. It might not fire them up. Deep diver down there, pull it, knock it on the ground, bottom, whatever. Fish might come up and get it. Now, there's many different colors. If it's sunny out, not sunny. If it's muddy, I'm going to throw a little bit brighter color, maybe like this. And, if it has rattles, like this one has rattles. So, I would throw this one in muddier water. It can work in clear, but sometimes throwing stuff like this in clear water, it might be too much for the fish. Like spinner baits, it might be too much for the fish. So you got to kind of work around your conditions and see if it's muddy. I'm going to throw brighter, kind of louder, bigger imitations so they can see it. Because they can still see it and hear it, or feel the vibrations rather. But it's harder for them to see it, so, use something that they can see easier. But if it's more clear water, I'm going to throw something, a little darker, a little more natural. This one doesn't have any rattles. Well, I guess it's got two little weights in it that rattle, but it doesn't have any rattles in it. And it's not so bright and colorful, because if the you know, you think we can see really far on land. Fish can do the same in water, you know. If it's clear, they could probably see 20 feet up, however far they can see. So you don't need something super bright and colorful, but it's up to you. You know, clear conditions. I don't throw bright colors. Another thing is wind is a big part of lures. There's I think it's 8 to 10 miles an hour, 6 to 10, however, in that little range right there. These puppies, crankbaits, shad imitating baits, work very well, you know, because plankton gets pushed up from the wind, shad follow them, and you know, the predatory bit fish like bass will follow them. And if you can get on a school, a crankbait's the way to go, rather than, or topwater, rather than a worm. I'm not going to throw a worm if they're, you know, busting the topwater on some shad. That's not what I'm going to throw. But you can throw what you want to throw. That's crankbaits. I didn't grab topwaters, but topwaters they're nice and can be tricky at the same time. If you're throwing it on braid, you're going to hate it. Because throwing topwaters on braid, unless it's a frog, just sucks. If it's got treble hooks, it's not fun because it gets tangled up in a mess. You know, there's buzz baits. You got your spooks, walking baits, frogs, and they all serve a purpose. Frogs for grass. You're not going to throw something that has treble hooks like a spook up in grass because it's going to get tangled and mess your lure up. So you throw a frog in there. But if it's out in the open, you know, in the middle of the, not middle of the water, but if it's like, you know, maybe 13 feet deep, no grass, and they're busting on shad, you probably don't want to throw a frog. You want to throw more of a shad imitating bait. And this box is probably my favorite, most organized box. Hooks, weights, you know, spinner baits. Spinner baits are a good lure, especially when it's fall, wind, a little bit of wind, and muddy water also. But spinner baits, wind and fall, water's getting cool but not super cold yet. Ooh, can have some fun on them. And then we'll have, you know, we'll move into, you know, not moving baits as much. You know, you have different things you can use, like just Texas weight, and you'll throw it on. It's a mess right now, but like I'll just pull it out and show you. You know, Texas rig is good for getting through grass, rocks. You can throw crawl imitating baits. All you need, you know, weight like this and hook. They're helpful. They work. They catch a good bit of fish. You can throw crawls on them, worms on them. You know, whatever floats your boat. Whatever you think will catch fish. You know. And then, you know, you have your shaky head, which I don't like these twist ones, but you know, if you got them sitting around, why not use them? You know, better for worms. You know, you even got these type of weights that I use for a secret, well, I guess not secret rig, but it's the chicken rig. You know, you got drop shots, and they're made for different things. Fishing grass, I'm not going to throw a shaky head or jig like I said. I'm going to throw a drop shot. Or even a chicken rig. A chicken rig even works because it has a little weight. Like, oh wait, I even got one right here. Little chicken rig. It sits like this and it walks. And it keeps the hook out of the grass, but sometimes it doesn't work. You know, it gets grass, so drop shot, fishing grass. But if I'm fishing rocks, you know, depending on the time of year, I'm going to throw something that lives in the rocks. Crawfish and worms. Worms, I would throw more around, you know, in my opinion, I throw it around docks, structure, like wood, rotting wood, just different types of wood in general. But rocks, I usually throw crawfish. My goal is to make my bait look close to the real thing as I possibly can. You're trying to trick the fish into biting your bait. And, you know, you spend, if you fish 8 hours, you spend probably, depending, 10 to 30 minutes of your days just catching fish. And that's not a lot. And so the better imitating your bait is, the better chance you have of catching a fish. And there's so many different rigs out there. And then, like, even this one. I think this one's a Tokyo rig. I think that's what this one's called. You know, simple bait. It sits like this above grass, and you walk it. I've never really thrown it much. Some people like it, like Carolina rig. I like it. I like how it looks and whatnot. Don't really throw it much. It's kind of boring. Don't really have confidence in it. Another thing is confidence. You have to have confidence in what you're throwing. Like, I could be chunking this thing all day, and my dad could be throwing the same thing, and he's catching fish on it. If I don't have the confidence to throw it, that I know I'm going to catch fish on it, it doesn't work as good. You might catch fish on it, but you got to have that confidence, that mindset that that lure is going to work. But sometimes you can throw everything at them, including the kitchen sink, and it just doesn't work. Some days are like that. Some days are tough. Some days just will kick your butt. That's why fishing tournaments, you should fish 3 to 4 days ahead. Like, fish Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the tournament's Thursday, rest of the weekend, or whenever it is. Because if it, you go out there and fish one day, like pre-fishing, you used to caught a 3-pounder. Last video caught a 3-pounder and another 2-pounder, however big it was. I didn't weigh that fish. But the tournament day came around, it was a pain in the butt. I got one fish. It helps with points, but it's not going to win the tournament. But I'm going to talk. This is a jerkbait. Most of you probably know what it is. If you don't, it's a jerkbait. Simple. Has rattles. And what you do with it is the exact same thing the name is. You jerk it. You sit there, make it look like a dying shad. You want to make this like easy prey to a bass. It works. And, well, every lure you see has at least caught one fish. I guarantee it. But this isn't something that really works for me. It might work for you. It doesn't work for me. Everything is based on your conditions, where you're fishing, when you're fishing, and how you're fishing. If you're more of a fast fisherman, you hit point to point to point, you don't want to be throwing a worm sitting there fishing a whole bank for an hour or 2 hours, however long. It's not going to, it's a good way to improve, trying different techniques, but you have a technique that works for you. Like me, I like fishing slower. It works for me. I can fish fast. If times get tough, I'll chunk and wind. Take a crankbait, just not beat the bank, because I don't throw at the bank, I throw with the bank. Usually when I do that, it helps me improve my catch rates. But if you're a slow fisherman, not slow, but you spend more time fishing, this one. If you spend more time fishing a bank, something like, this would work. Worm. Throw it on Texas rig like I showed you. Shaky head. I wouldn't throw this on drop shot, but you can. Robo worms are the way to go on drop shot, my opinion. But there's so many different things for you to use that, eventually you'll figure them out. Now, I don't want you to copy this, because this bait right here is not guaranteed you to catch fish. It might work for me, might not work for you, but it's based on, what the fish are doing. You have to have you have to think like a fish does. You gotta have that mindset to figure out where they are. Because if they ain't there, you ain't gonna catch them. I mean, you could be throwing anything you want. The fish not there, they're not gonna bite. That's how it works. There's no fish, no bites. So first you gotta find the fish. That's the most important key. Find a pattern. If I catch one fish on a shad wrap or crankbait, whatever, yeah, I caught a fish, but I haven't gotten a pattern. Now, if I start getting 2 or 3, 4, and it's on a rock bank that's got sunlight shining on it in a few shade spots, I'm going to start going to those types of spots to throw that lure. But now if you catch one on a shad wrap, one on a shaky head, one on a topwater, it's kind of sporadic. If you can key in on what the fish are eating. It's like some days, like spawn. It's getting ready to be spawn. Some places already have. Some are getting ready to be. They're not gonna, well, I guess you could catch them on crankbaits, but if they're on a bed, I'm gonna be throwing something like, well, I guess this is a swim jig. I mean a regular jig. I'm gonna be throwing something that's big that looks like it's gonna eat their eggs, so they can, kill it rather than just, little tiny shad just swimming through the bed. But I don't know, it's all based on you. You got to have confidence in what you're throwing. You got to find the fish, and then you got to figure the fish out. And there's so many different techniques and ways to do it that just lures, lures are a big part of fishing, but this up here, mindset is probably 90% mindset, 10% physical. You got to trust your gear, trust what you're using to catch fish. And if you don't have faith in your gear, it's not going to have faith in you. You know, you're not going to catch as many fish. But I hope this video helps you. Just some lures, less on the certain lures and more on the broad of them. You know, less about this certain jerkbait and more jerkbaits in general. I hope it helped. I'll see you on the next one. And this will be the last one we're doing inside. We're going to be fishing a pond, lake, and river next. And we'll finally be outside catching some more fish. And stay tuned. I'll see you in the next one. Stay hooked.